Welcome back into the Fantasy Football Funhouse. We've been on a little bit of a break. Kevin and I came back with some guests a few short weeks ago. We decided we'd let the NFL draft come and go and then get back in here and talk some more NFL draft and landing spots. And we decided to bring another guest in. We have Steve Marcus, formerly of the the Falafel House Fantasy Football podcast. Steve Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. I'll tell you what, I've been listening to this Fantasy Football Funhouse podcast for a long time. Excited to finally be allowed to come on and spend some time and talk some rookies with you guys. Thanks for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. It's really nice to have a guest on that knows nothing about football, hasn't been paying attention for 6 months, and is overall useless. So we're glad to have you.
You guys make some good choices, I'll tell you what.
When you say finally allowed, is that at the behest of your wife and children? They finally allowed you to come back onto a podcast?
Actually, they're out of town right now. They don't know that I'm doing this, so if we could try and keep that under wraps.
we could all be quiet about it.
So legitimately, this will be the only show Steve does this year. It's good to have him with us. It's always best when the three of us are together. So glad you're here, Steve. Some interesting landing spots in the NFL draft. We have all started at least some of our drafts and auctions. I know this week the Pigs leagues have all started up, which all three of us rather play in both of those 2 and 3. Kevin is in 1, 2, and 3. I've had a couple of drafts, best ball dynasty that I'm in. That's going pretty well. I had a startup that started this week with Crazy Frank, Hot Take Fuego Frank, started in Degenerates. So he'll be happy that I mentioned his name. So we're going to touch on our favorite teams tonight because our favorite teams, the Patriots, the Broncos, and the Raiders, all took first-round players that are fantasy relevant and then some other players that might become fantasy relevant down the road. So I figured why not start our first show back with those teams. And let's start with the champions, the New England Patriots. We'll head over to Kevin's backyard, and we'll start out with Kevin, was it a surprise that N'Keal Harry was taken with the last pick of the first round?
I wasn't surprised that the Patriots took him so much as the fact that he was still there. I was kind of surprised that he was still there. I know a lot of mocks had him, some of them had him slipping, but I didn't see anywhere he wasn't within the first 31 picks. So to see him on the board and available at 32, I think that was what was surprising to me. Everyone knew the Patriots had the need going into the season with, or into the draft with wide receivers, basically bringing back Julian Edelman, who was good at, the second half of last season coming off the injury. He was great. And, but he's getting older. They still have Philip Dorsett, and that's about it. Right. So maybe Josh Gordon gets his stuff together and comes back. There's rumors that he'll be reinstated before the season, but we'll see. No one can really depend on that. Gronk retires. So, as far as people who can catch the ball, it was Edelman, James White, and if you consider Philip Dorsett some sort of receiving threat, that's about it. So they needed something at that position. N'Keal Harry is, in my opinion, perfect for their offense. He's tall. He plays those short intermediate routes fantastically. He's great at getting open within those spaces, and then he's even better after the catch, which is exactly what the Patriots want their wide receivers to do. And they don't have a big presence to do that. Obviously, Edelman's kind of a littler guy. He's sort of more in the Steve mold than anything else. So he's, it's just it's a great fit. I'm psyched that they took him because we don't see the Patriots take a lot of chances at wide receiver in the first round. And we've seen them screw up a whole bunch in the second and third rounds, but it's really good to see. I'm happy to have him on the roster as far as a fan of the team. And from a fantasy perspective, I think it's going to be great, right? He's going to get looks. We know that the old mantra, and they've kind of gone away from it a little bit in the past couple of years. But the way Brady always worked was whoever's open's getting the ball, right? His favorite receiver is the open one. Went a little away from it with some of the changeover on the roster recently, and particularly when you have a guy like Gronk and you can force it in there and know he'll catch it. They sort of did that a little bit more, but I think you'll see him start to stray back to whoever's open because there's no Gronk to lean on. Edelman will still be a guy that'll get open pretty regularly, and there's really nobody else that's established on the team. So I think you're going to see a pretty decent share of work heading to N'Keal Harry. And to me, from a fantasy perspective, there's no question in startups right now, particularly for Dynasty, I mean, Dynasty's the 101 in a rookie draft this year. In startups, he's probably going higher. He should be going relatively high. And I'm going to look at him, and even in redraft, where we don't typically look at first year receivers as often as we, past couple of years have been better, but historically, first year wide receivers aren't the guys you're targeting in redrafts. But he's a guy I'm going to have on my roster. Hopefully, get him in the later rounds, maybe 8 to 10 range, where I think you could start to see some real production towards the second half of the season.
Kevin, it was interesting what you said about his intermediate routes and how he catches the ball. Because I think people see certain highlights, and if you just watch highlight films, you think, oh, wow, this guy's an incredible leaper. He goes up for contested catches, but he does both things. This is the way I describe him is Randy Moss without the speed, because Randy Moss was super quick. Randy Moss without the speed, and then Cordarrelle Patterson, right? Two guys who played in New England previously. He does both of those things. His tackle breaking ability on short passes at the line is unprecedented probably in this draft. And he's a very exciting player, landed in a very good spot, and I haven't gotten him anywhere yet, so I'm a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, when you see a guy that can run bubble screens and short, cut routes and things like that, and you put him on an offense that basically exclusively runs those things, it's just a match made in heaven. I don't know how he's not the 101 in rookie drafts for Dynasty.
That's my question for Steve. Steve, briefly on N'Keal Harry, is he your 101?
He's right up there. If you're not talking, super flex leagues that are two quarterback, non-super flex, I think you got to take him. I think he's got the most upside. And like Kevin said, his landing spot is perfect. With Gronk being gone, he's going to get so many red zone opportunities because not only is he good at those short intermediate routes, you can just throw the ball up to him and he's going to go up there and get it, like Sal said, from those highlight reels. So yeah, I think he is the most dynamic player and I think he has the most upside. But I was going to ask Kevin for Dynasty, you like him this year. You like him while he's got Tom Brady there, but what we know Tom Brady's not going to be there. So do you think he's somebody that's going to be quarterback proof going forward on the New England Patriots when Tom Brady finally decides to not play anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. I think Brady's got 2 years at minimum. I think you're going to get 2 years out of him. So I'm not worried about this year or next year so much. After that, it gets a little squishy, but you got to hope that the Patriots do something to shore up the position or at least take some more shots. They unfortunately hit with Jimmy, but it just wasn't the right timing. But you see, they're taking a shot with a guy like Stidham, who we'll talk about in a little bit.
Stidham, yeah, don't jump ahead, boys.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I fully expect that they'll probably take another shot again next year, maybe with something in a little bit of a higher round. I don't think this was the right class to do it, to be honest with you. I was pulling for Will Grier. He actually got picked one pick ahead of them in the third round. That last pick in the third round, I really thought is where they were going to take him. Didn't work out, but that's okay. And as to your question, as far as whether or not he's quarterback proof, I mean, I don't think any receiver is completely quarterback proof. We've seen some be successful with bad quarterbacks. I think he'll be fine because of what he can do, because of the way that he can catch a ball on a short route and break tackles and make people miss and really extend plays that way. I think he'll be the type of guy that you can depend on from a fantasy perspective, because even if he's only getting those shorter throws or, if he's not getting hit with accuracy on a long ball, he's going to be able to do some things that'll get you points.
All right, 9 minutes on N'Keal Harry. Probably not what we wanted to do tonight to get through the show in Kevin's time constraints. I was going to switch over to Denver. Let's just stay in New England and go over the next two guys I want to talk about. Let's go with Jarrett Stidham, Kevin, since you mentioned him and Steve asked about future quarterbacks. They took him in the fourth round, 133 overall. This is a guy after 2017 was considered possibly a first rounder in the NFL if he was coming out at that time. And in 2018 was not a very good year for him. If you watch the film, if you listen to the scouts, the team wasn't very good. The offensive line wasn't very good. His receivers dropped a ton of passes. Go watch how many balls these guys dropped, end zone passes they dropped. He's definitely a project player. So sitting behind Brady for 2, maybe 3 years is something that would benefit him. They finally opened up the offense for this guy in the Music City Bowl. He threw for 5 touchdowns. He had an amazing 15 for 21, 373 and 5 touchdowns. So once the offense was open for him to play, because he was actually critical of his coaches as well, saying it just was not the right offense for him. Give me briefly, Kevin. Do you think there's a possibility 2 years, 3 years from now, he's in the running as a starting quarterback for the New England Patriots?
I do, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that we really saw with Stidham as far as this past year that I think lowered his draft stock so much was the fact that he started to get really antsy. There was a lot of pressure on that team. He didn't get protected very well. As you mentioned, the receivers really weren't that quality, and I think he started to press a little bit as a result of it. And possibly because there was some pressure from being a highly touted draft prospect that obviously didn't come out and that kind of thing. But I think that with some time, with some grooming, you can start to see them highlight some of the traits that were really good about him. I mean, he's got decent size, he's got decent arm strength. He's very accurate on the run. He's pretty mobile. He can play the play action very well, which is something that the Patriots use a lot. So I think those are the types of things that they can highlight and maybe get a little more out of him as they start to develop him over time. And if Brady's willing to start working with this guy, or any of the guys, I mean, he pretty much ignored Jimmy Garoppolo. But if he's getting to the point in his career where he's like, all right, it's over, I can start working with these guys, that's only going to benefit them.
Any truth to the fact that he ignored Garoppolo because Garoppolo was better looking than him?
I think it's 100% true.
How insecure? Wouldn't work with him? What, is he jealous or something?
No, I mean, what? Honestly, it pushed Brady. There was nothing better than bringing in Garoppolo because he got better. I mean, he was starting to fall off a little. He got better. And so that was great. But at the same time, he just I don't think he was at a point in his career where he was ready to give it up. He knew he wanted to play longer. So he wasn't, it was a competition to him. And he's a competitive guy.
All right. Running back Damian Harris out of Alabama, the actual Alabama starting running back, as opposed to the guy my Oakland Raiders drafted. Damian Harris, Kevin, the Patriots, there's one guy on a team year in and year out that you could be confident. Well, before Gronkowski got hurt and got retired, it was Gronk as well. It is Brady, because every year they just seem to screw us with running backs. They take Sony Michel last year, and Michel looks great. People think, all right, we finally have a legit all down back for the Patriots. Maybe they're going in that direction, and they take Harris this year. Now, I watched Harris. I don't see anything fancy about Harris, right? He's not a fancy running back, but what he is one cut and he's gone, and he bulldozes people. If you ask me my opinion, honestly, this is the goal line back this year for the New England Patriots. He's got that mentality. He's got that the way he plays. What the hell should we expect this year with the backfield in New England?
I don't think you're going to expect much out of Harris, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I think you're right. They may use him in goal line situations. I think it's entirely possible that you'll see him there. I think it's entirely possible that they cut Rex Burkhead or expect Rex Burkhead to be injured and not on the team or available. So I think that's where you're going to see Harris take over. To your point, he's a good bulldozer, but he's not really a finesse runner, and he doesn't have that extra gear. I don't think he's breaking too many long runs, but he can be used in the goal line. I do think they expect more out of Sony Michel from a finesse standpoint, right? He was used a ton at the goal line. I don't think they want to do that. I don't think they want him bulldozing through the line 3 times, from first and goal. I think they want to use him 20s to the 20s, let him carry the load and get hopefully break some of those big runs, because I think they're expecting more big runs out of him this year. I'm definitely expecting more big runs out of him this year as he starts to understand blocking and schemes a little bit more than he did coming out. So I'm not worried about Sony Michel's value so much as I am worried. If I'm drafting Harris, I'm not drafting him to expect much out of him this year. Maybe you get some goal lines, but that's about it.
Time to let go of the Jeremy Hill dream.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremy Hill's all done. I don't think Gillislee's coming back. I think and Burkhead's probably the next in that line of guys that had some hype but never really succeeded.
And Brandon Bolden re-signed in the.
To me, he's Matthew Slater, right? Matthew Slater's a wide receiver, but he's never on the field. Yeah. I mean, except for special teams. So. It's weird though. I will say this: it's very odd when you're trying to talk about a player and do it quickly, and Sal's leaning into the camera on a regular basis. What is that, Sal? What are you doing?
You see that light behind me?
For those of you we don't have anyone watching on YouTube, I'm sure, but at the same time, Sal's just slowly leaning forward. It's really.
I keep seeing that light.
It's really unnerving.
He keeps telling us he wasn't drinking before the podcast. I'm starting to wonder. He's got
Quite
the sway
possibly,
going.
quite possibly why I'm single.
Hey, listen, before we move on, Steve, you're the only one who can appreciate this. I had Sal on the Dynasty Wall Street show, the other podcast that I host.
Yes.
And, that show does things a little bit differently from a technical standpoint. We don't just fire up the old computer and go on that one. We actually do some editing and some sound quality things. It took us about 40 minutes just to get started. I had to teach him how to download GarageBand. I had to show him how to use it. Like,
in all fairness, he had all day to tell me to download it. He decides to tell me to download it as we're starting to record.
I did not realize that you, as someone who podcasts regularly, didn't know how to set up your own recording.
We don't do that here. Let's head on over to Denver where Steve's Broncos play.
Yes.
Steve, the Broncos did some interesting things in this draft. They traded back in the first round, and they got what a lot of people consider to be the best tight end in this draft, and Noah Fant. I was definitely a TJ Hawkinson guy over Fant, but I don't think there's any denying that Fant had the better landing spot, right? The Detroit Lions is not exactly a place you want your tight ends to go. As much as I've been in love with every tight end that's come through there, they're never successful while they're there. So hopefully Michael Roberts will land somewhere else this year and become a stud since TJ Hawkinson is there. But Noah Fant, not the complete tight end that Hawkinson is, but definitely a guy that will move around to different positions on the offense and get downfield and catch passes. And he's going to be with Flacco, who is a tight end lover. So
Yes.
Tell me, Steve, were you happy with this pick? And tell me what you think will happen year one with Noah Fant.
Remember all those tight ends in Baltimore that Steve loved? Like all of them?
I've still got a few of them. I've still got a few. Gonna have to look into that a little bit though. Yeah, Noah Fant. I am a fan of his. I was a little surprised with them going that direction, as I'm sure a lot of people were. They just spent some draft capital on Jake Butt a few years ago, coming off that injury that he had in his last game with Michigan. And then he had an injury with Denver again last year as well. But he is not a Jake Butt type quarterback or tight end. I'm sorry. He is not that type of player. He is more of an
not a tight end.
Jake Butt is a tight end.
So his butt
Noah
is a tight end is what you're saying. It's just...
You know what? I can't speak to that. Haven't looked that deep yet. But Noah Fant is not that type of tight end. He is an Evan Ingram type of tight end. So you look at Denver's offense and you see you've got two of these guys now, and you think that maybe they could try to put together a New England type of situation with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, maybe hopefully without the murder. That would be great. But that is the type of offense.
Why, Steve? Why? Just why?
I just don't root for those type of things. I'm sorry.
I rule it was necessary. Continue.
And you look at, like Sal said, the fit there, and you look at everything else that Denver has there. They've got Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay behind the line and a running back. They've got Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders, Deshaun Hamilton as their wide receivers. They've got Jake Butt as a more prototypical tight end, and then Noah Fant that they could also run out there as someone who can run up the seams. He's going to be a mismatch nightmare for teams. I really like what they have done with their offense all around, and I think that means that they can be very fantasy viable if the offensive line can hold together and give Joe Flacco some sort of pocket, some sort of time to throw. And so I like Noah Fant this year. I think that he could, he's going to be their offensive tight end. Jake Butt, that takes a pretty big hit away from him. And so I think he could eke his way up there, maybe right around maybe tight end 15 range this year, just right out of the gate with some room to grow after that. But that's probably where I'd put him. But I think he's got a lot of room for upside. He is going to be a problem. And so overall, I wasn't expecting them to take him, but I'm happy with where he is.
In a regular rookie draft, not a tight end premium, where do you feel you'd be comfortable taking him?
Just that's tough. Probably early second round with no tight end premium is where I would be looking for him. If it's a tight end premium, then he gets into the mid to late first round for me, because I think going on, and would be for Dynasty, obviously, I think that he's got a future. I think that this is the way that the NFL is going. And as long as they can utilize him correctly, then these types of players are going to have value.
Leading up to the draft, Leading up to the draft, I was 100% Hawkinson over him. And then I was faced with the reality in a league where I have to start two tight ends. I had the number 6 and a number 7 pick. And believe it or not, in the Superflex, Haskins fell to me at 6. But at 7, I wanted to take one of these two tight ends. And I went Hawkinson just because that's who my number one tight end was. But it was a definite tough decision for me to not go Fant. I think the immediate impact will be on Fant more than Hawkinson.
Yeah, see, I think people are overplaying the Hawkinson thing. Hawkinson, from an NFL perspective, is a better tight end in my opinion. But he's not going to be Gronk. I don't think he's going to be getting as much volume. I don't think he's going to be getting as much. He's doing as much in the passing game as Gronk did. I think he's a good, solid, all-around player. You know, maybe more of a Jason Witten type, which would be great as well. But I think Fant is going to be used more in the passing game than that. And I think that he's got a better chance at more targets and more catches and ultimately more touchdowns. And in my opinion, we play fantasy for those points, right? Like, I love Hawkinson as a prospect, would love him on my team in real, NFL, but for the fantasy perspective, it was Fant for me all day long. And Steve, I don't know that you're getting him in the early second, even without the tight end premium right now, because the boards on the rookie drafts are so all over the place, and there's really you get past the top 4 and forget it. I mean, it's all over the place. In Superflex, maybe you're talking about the top 6, depending on who you like, but it's really all over the place. And I think those guys are going in the 8, 9, 10 range for picks.
Okay, Steve, Kevin's going to appreciate this one, Steve, because Kevin is the one who always says to us, don't undervalue the offensive lineman drafted in the NFL draft when it comes to fantasy football. And the Broncos got a good one with the 9th pick in the second round. They got Dalton Reisner, a guy who PFF had as a first-round grade. He was he played both center and tackle, I believe, in college, and he was the highest-rated tackle on their board. He's the highest-rated run blocking tackle in the draft, slightly lower on pass protection. But Steve, speak to what this means for the run game this year in Denver. And while you're at it, tell us who you think is the better running back to own in Denver for 2019. What year is it? 2019.
Well, yeah, the offensive line has been an issue for Denver for years. They've been working on it the last few years. Last year, it did seem to get a little bit better. Things seem to be coming together a little bit more. They added another piece from the Arizona offensive line this year, and now they've added this Dalton Reisner, who, like Sal said, very, very touted offensive line prospect. Most of the knocks against him, like Sal said, were pass blocking issues, things like that, being able to stop an edge rusher. And where he went and where he landed in Denver, I think was a very good fit for him, because they're going to definitely use him on the inside. They just lost their center, Matt Paradis, who was a key cog in that offensive line and has been for years. So being able to move somebody in there or move somebody into center and have Reisner on the inside is going to mean great things for their offensive line. I'm very happy with, he's a huge kid. He's 6'5", 312 pounds, ginormous, and he's got huge hands. He is a huge run blocker. So I'm happy for that. I think that can only mean better things for their offensive line. And as for running back there, I don't see how you could put Royce Freeman ahead of Phillip Lindsay right now. I think that Phillip Lindsay is the guy. He offers more upside out of the passing game, and we didn't see anything from last year that would lead you to believe that he couldn't run the ball when asked to. He is a tough runner. He is a huge surprise, but I think as of right now, I think you're going to have to draft him first, and I think that he's probably going to end up with the most production in that backfield again.
Yeah, I got 2 more Lindsay stocks this year in Dynasty Leagues. I had the one in the Falafel Dynasty from last year that I was lucky enough to get off of waivers. A lot of talk about what's his name. Wow. How bad is it that I just forgot the other running back's name? That's how
Royce Freeman
is. Yeah, wow. Royce Freeman. The Rolls Royce Freeman. All right, Steve, how quickly is Drew Lock the quarterback in Denver?
I would like him to at least wait a year. I hope that Joe Flacco allows him to get some time to not have to start right away. I am extremely happy that Denver ended up getting him at 42 as opposed to the 10 spot where everybody was saying that he was going to be drafted. So for them to be able to trade back and get Noah Fant and then also end up still getting the quarterback everyone thought they were going to get at 42, that was pretty huge. I was a big fan of that. I am a fan of his and what he can be, but I just don't know if he can, how long it's going to take him to put it all together and be as consistent as he would need to be a quarterback in the NFL. I think our friend Tony Reimer, he said it that he sees a lot of Jay Cutler in this guy. I see a lot of Josh Allen in him in terms of his arm talent. He's got a huge arm, but he doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't know when to tone it down, when to bring it back. He doesn't know how to angle his arm right on all of his throws. Incredibly inconsistent. So I would like him to sit for at least a year to watch and see everything and hopefully be able to get what he has in his mind, because it seems like he's got all the tools. It seems like he knows what to do. It just seems to be a problem from getting his body to do what his mind is telling him to do. So that is my issue with Drew Lock. I'm excited that he's there. I just don't want him to have to go out there and learn on the job week one. I'd like him to have some time.
Yeah, John Elway looks smart compared to Dave Gettleman. At the beginning of this drafts, getting a guy who many people felt was better than Daniel Jones at the 42nd pick as opposed to the 6th pick overall. Maybe next week we'll get into the Giants debacle and all that stuff, because that could take up a whole episode by itself. So we won't get into that right now. Kevin, you have anything to add on the guys in Denver?
No, not really. I think Steve did a good job for a change. I'm a big fan of Drew Lock. I'd like to see him. I mean, if he can sit for a year, that's great, but Flacco may not make that possible. And I think he's a guy that can learn on the fly. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks coming out. I haven't been able to get him in any rookie drafts, unfortunately, because the cost has been a little bit higher than I would like to pay for a guy that's going to sit. But I think I like what Denver did, and being able to get that guy in the second round as opposed to 10th overall is just, hey, it's about time they did something like that.
No kidding.
All right.
What worries me about them is that they've taken a few quarterbacks over the years and have shown that even with them sitting, they don't know how to get them ready to start playing. So that is still a concern.
I will say I don't know that I trust the coaching staff there to really develop a team and put it together. I mean, Fangio is a great defensive coordinator. I have no idea what's going to happen with him as a coach, and I just don't see. I don't know. I don't know that they're the right group to develop. And then if you're starting over again next year, then that makes it worse. So, who did they bring in for offensive coordinator? I don't remember.
I don't either.
I'm sure it's obviously nobody important. Steve or Sal, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Raiders? I mean, I'm expecting. Well, I shouldn't say this. Typically, most people on podcasts can't tee themselves up to talk about things. Maybe you can, but I don't know if you want me to jump in here and sort of lead you through some of the Raiders picks. But I think the biggest
out of teeing myself up.
I think the biggest one that we're all kind of curious about is Jacobs. You mentioned him earlier. I mean, he's a guy that had limited production, not limited production in college, but limited usage in college, we should say. He wasn't the starter. Damian Harris was. He was a guy that went way after him. But very hyped during the pre-draft process, and the guy that I think is expected to come in there pretty much carry the load 100% for the Raiders if you talk to fantasy Twitter and all of that. So is this guy the real deal? Is it a pick that you think can get going right away?
Well, I was happy with the pick. I mean, scout-wise, it was pretty clear this was the number one running back in this draft. Like, I don't pretend to act like I scout all these guys pre-draft and I do there's better guys out there doing that, but I will research the guys once they land where they land. I will do mostly research on the tight ends because that's my thing. But but I knew Josh Jacobs was going to the Raiders. That was like a very poorly hidden secret going into the NFL draft. So they took him number 24 overall. The biggest thing with running backs is opportunity. Right? So they draft him, Isaiah Crowell, tears his Achilles, he's gone. Right? Marshawn Lynch retired.
Coming back.
Him or Doug Martin. They re-signed Doug Martin. But are you really worried about what Marshawn Lynch is going to do cutting into this kid's opportunity? I'm not.
No.
I really do believe he could play all three downs as a running back, and I believe they're going to try to do it. The nice thing for him is you slipped up before, Kevin, and you corrected it. Yeah, there was nothing wrong with his actual production. He produced when he was given the ball. He just was given the ball the least out of the three backs that were in that three-headed monster there at Alabama. But he's got little to no mileage on those tires, right? So I think so many times you're like, oh, this guy's been beat up in college. He's going to come into the NFL. He's not going to last long. Here we got a guy who didn't get beat up like that. Still has a pretty nice pedigree. And he's got a lot of years left on those bones. He had 1,491 total rushing yards over 3 years. Over 3 years at Alabama, where most guys will do that in a season. So he really is limited in his stats, but I think it's there. He's a guy who comes from a background where they struggled their whole life, so he knows what it's like to struggle. So I think this is a kid who will keep his head on straight. I'll give the Raiders credit with one thing. They really did go with character guys from top to bottom in this draft. There's not a guy they drafted that you can't say, hey, this guy was this incident, that incident. Every one of them are good character guys. So I am happy with it. I think that in most drafts, he is arguably the 101 right now with N'Keal Harry, but at least the 102 in a lot of them. Steve, where would you have Josh Jacobs in your rankings for rookies this year?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. He is definitely the number one running back that I'm going after in most of our rookie auctions right now. He is the one that I'm looking for. And like you said, it's mostly because of that opportunity. Even with Isaiah Crowell being there, he was still pretty highly touted, but knowing that other guy is not going to be there to take that production away from him or just take that opportunity away from him, that gives him a huge boost. So I'm a big fan of Josh Jacobs. I think that he is a prototypical runner. He is quick when he gets the ball. He gets through traffic very well. He's got really great footwork. He's got good balance. He's somebody that I don't think you necessarily had to see him get the 1,400 yards in 1 year to know that he's an NFL talent. So he is right up there at the very top. He is somebody that, like I said, I'm going for in all my rookie drafts.
Yeah, I like the player for sure. I think that it's a great landing spot, and you really can't beat that. The Raiders will find a way to screw this up, but it does remind me a little bit of, remember Joe Mixon was a guy that didn't have the full support of his team or full carry load of his team coming out of college, and yet he was very successful when he got in the NFL because of the skill set involved. Sal, we flip ahead now to the fourth round because obviously we have to talk about the tight ends because that's your specialty. And
we got a good one here.
Yeah, this is a great one. A guy that I think many people have their eyes raised, are paying attention to him. Foster Moreau, out of LSU. Marginal prospect, but a very fast guy, good hands, big. He's he's got the tools that theoretically could lead to some solid production. But I'll tell you this, the Raiders, with the exception of Jared Cook, have historically ruined all tight end production, no matter who it was.
I really thought that they were going to go for one of the two tight ends. There was rumors that they were going to take Hawkinson at 4. There was a rumor leading into the draft that was going to happen. And when they said, we have a surprise for you, I thought it was going to be that. I did multiple shows in the offseason on other people's podcasts where I was invited on specifically for their tight end shows. And I had a list of 10 rookie tight ends, and Foster Moreau is not one of them. Foster Moreau he was essentially a blocking tight end in college. I believe he had somewhere between 40 and 60 total receptions in college for the entire time that he was there. Another guy who is an excellent character guy and going to do a good job blocking. But he's listed as the number 2 tight end right now behind Darren Waller and ahead of Derek Carrier. None of those guys get me very excited. I heard from Mitchell Renz today that there's a slight rumor through CBS about Kyle Rudolph possibly landing in Oakland. He's one of the few teams that are listed for a landing spot for him. So I think that would make me a little bit happier. In a deep rookie draft that I just did for Best Ball League, it's start 2 tight ends. I took a lot of tight ends. I took Moreau because it was like the 6th round, and why not, right? It's my favorite team, and he's there. But I don't think he's very unsimilar to Lee Smith, who they just cut. I don't know that he ever becomes a fantasy relevant tight end, personally.
I can't say I disagree with any of that, and mostly because of what Kevin said about Oakland Raiders and their tight end usage. Just historically, that is not something that is just, lasted through one coaching change or anything like that. It has been decades that they just barely ever use it. And yes, they used Jared Cook quite a bit, but they didn't have anybody else last year. They had no one else to give the ball to. So he got a lot of that. They have Antonio Brown now. They have Josh Jacobs now. They have other people to get the ball to. They aren't going to need to throw the ball to Foster Moreau. Don't even know, can't even read his name. And so no, I'm not a big fan. But like you said, he doesn't cost you much. And so if you're filling spots at the end of your rookie draft and you got space for him, it's not going to hurt you to take a flyer on him and cut him later if you need to.
Here's what you do, Steve. You don't take him. You use that pick on someone else, and you wait for someone to cut him at the end of this next season, and then you pick him up next year before he pops. That's
there
what
you go.
do. That's the move with Foster Moreau. I wouldn't draft him this year. I'd wait until next year when he's on waivers, and I'd pick him up before the season.
Let me see if Kevin can guess which tight end I would have rather them have take.
Oh man,
Paying attention to me lately. It's a guy who I think seemingly was a sleeper at first, but he's getting grabbed everywhere, and people are spending up for him.
It's the gentleman from San Diego State.
Kahale Waring.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
it's super athletic tight end and raw as anything. But you ask me, who like 3 years from now is going to be a sick offensive tight end, then it's going to be that kid.
Yeah, I'm with you on that guy. I love him from a perspective, from a talent perspective. I think I'm a little concerned because Houston's tight ends tend to be marginal, similar to Oakland. We've seen, a couple of them get hyped over the years and they just don't really work out. But maybe, with the offense being a little more exciting these days with Sean Watson, maybe they'll be able to turn a talented prospect into something. So I do like him. Let's move ahead one round further into the draft, and the Raiders took a guy who I thought for sure would end up on the Patriots somehow. If you looked at all of the prospects in the entire draft, any draft eligible player, and you saw 5'10", 184, white guy, Clemson, like this guy was meant for the Patriots. Somehow he ends up on the Raiders, but Hunter Renfrow, give me your thoughts on him.
Well, he ends up in Patriots West, as they've become to be known over there in Oakland. Well, one of the things you noticed if you watched or followed the NFL draft, that the Oakland Raiders are in love with players from Clemson, right? So this kid, I'll tell you what I like about this kid. He was a walk-on at Clemson, and he played all 4 years while he was there. Nothing flashy, nothing crazy, but he makes plays. He's got big game ability. He scored the winning touchdown in the 2017 national championship. He's been on the field every year. He's got a lot of experience, and the Raiders have a spot for a slot wide receiver. Steve mentioned the weapons they got this year in Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams. Those are outside big play guys. There's a possibility that Renfrow could step right in and play slot right away. Likelihood in the first year, maybe not, but it's possible. So he's a guy I want to take late. I definitely have added him. I added him in 2 auctions and a draft this week that I've had. So back end of draft or auction guys, cheap auction guys. I think I'm going to $5 in 2 different auctions. But he's a guy with a little bit of a winning pedigree out of Clemson. He played 4 years. He was a 5th-year senior. So he's been around that winning program for a long time. And again, another good character guy. I like him as a Raider fan, and I think there's a possibility he could maybe get you some flex-worthy points at some point in the next 2 to 3 years. So, Steve, do you have any other opinions about any of these guys from Oakland?
When Cooper Kupp came out of college, everyone knocked him just because he's so old. And now you're saying Renfrow is a 5th-year senior and coming out. Why don't we hear about how old he is? Huh?
Bad analogy.
Yeah, that's terrible. That was just bad.
I'm just asking a question.
I mean, Hunter Renfrow is not Cooper Kupp.
Obviously.
Way different.
Easy to say 2 years from then. So easy to say now, Kevin.
He could be Kupp. Woohoo!
I do not see him reaching those levels. I'll just put it that way.
I agree. I was not trying to compare the two in terms of their talent. You all know I was a Cooper Kupp lover. Still am. All right. I wasn't comparing their talent.
So we should move on before Steve keeps going here.
Getting upset over here.
I had to pick the other day between Kupp and Woods. Who would you pick right now in a dynasty startup between those two guys?
I'm probably taking Woods. I don't know. I like Kupp, but I think I'd probably take Woods. My concern with Woods is that I don't know how much longer he's on the team, and if you take him away from that team, his value is going to go down. But he could end up getting a job as a number 1 somewhere too. So I don't know.
That's what helped me make my decision. I went with Kupp, And believe it or not, literally 3 rounds later, Woods was still there. I was like, oh, I could have him too. And I was like, I don't want to. It's a startup. I don't want to have the 2 guys on the same team. But I really almost did it.
Their injury with Cup makes me a little nervous. I mean, I know that guys come back from that all the time, but I don't know how much you're going to get out of him this year. It might take a little bit for him to ease back in. And Woods could put up solid production again this year, and then you can flip him for a guy like Cup and maybe get a little something on top.
All right, fellas. Last thing we're going to do here, Steve-O, did you have something you'd like to add?
No, I just said a little something. That's all. Kevin's talking about a little something going on.
The last thing I'd like to close the show out with tonight is a guy who maybe people haven't heard about, or maybe he's your sneaky pick. He's the last round. If you have a 7th and 8th round rookie draft, some people go very deep, or a $1 player in an auction that you're hoping to get. I got my guy in the 8th round of a rookie draft, and I got him for $1 in both the Bar Tab League and Capitalist Pigs 2 leagues this week, and that is David Sills. David Sills, if you go and look up the E60, it was just on last weekend. David Sills is the guy back when he was in 7th grade who was given a scholarship to play quarterback at USC by Lane Kiffin. And over those years, he eventually got hurt as a senior quarterback in high school and could never grip the ball correctly and could never really play the position. He ended up going to West Virginia as a quarterback and didn't do well. Switched over to wide receiver and had a pretty productive freshman year, but had this desire to play quarterback, went to a junior college, and it didn't go well. So the coach from West Virginia called him up and said, are you ready to come back and play wide receiver now? And he did. And as a junior at West Virginia, he caught 18 touchdown receptions. And as a senior, he caught 15 touchdown receptions, 33 touchdown receptions in 2 years, and he did not get drafted in the NFL draft. He was signed as an undrafted free agent with the Buffalo Bills. There is room in Buffalo for this kid to play. I think right now Buffalo is the type of team where everybody has a shot at a position on that team. It's a young team. There's a lot of guys there.
I don't know how he's going to compete with that.
He doesn't have to play John Brown's position. You know, you're not going to get me with that. You know, I love me some Smokey. But you got crazy bastards like Zay Jones there. Listen, I think it's a good landing spot for him. And this is a kid. I like guys who like walk-ons or guys who overcame adversity, guys who know what it's like to fight for something, to earn something. And this kid definitely had the world at his feet, lost it all, switched positions, and then was a stud at that position. So David Sills, just a flyer. You don't have to pay a lot for him, as I've already told you what I paid for him in my drafts this week. I would just throw him at the back end of your roster. Kevin, what about yourself?
Yeah, that's a good one. I always tend to lean towards the running backs, particularly when you can get them cheap. I like a guy in this particular draft. I've gotten him for as little as $2 in an auction, which is, relatively cheap comparatively to the rest of the auction there. I've gotten him in the mid to late 4th round in regular drafts, rookie drafts, and Bruce Anderson from North Dakota State. He's a running back, 5'11", 210 pounds. He's the production itself. I mean, everyone knows about North Dakota State. They win championship after championship there. So he's got a high caliber of play on a team that's very successful. And I'm not the type of guy, just like you, Sal. I'm not the guy that's going out and watching a lot of college film. So I tend to rely on others when I get my, visuals and my reports on these guys. The guy that's on the Dynasty Wall Street with me, Riley Bymaster, a guy I trust explicitly for player evaluation. The guy's awesome, very good at what he does. I'm going to play you a little clip because this is what he said about my man, Bruce Anderson.
Brucey can do it all. He's got good speed. He's very twitchy. He drives his legs through contact a lot. Never stops his feet from moving. He catches the ball really, really, really smoothly out of the backfield. I actually think he's one of the best pass catchers in this class. The stats don't back that up, but that's because I think Easton Stick, a lot of times, instead of checking it down, I think he ran the ball because he was an athlete who I think trusted his legs more than he'd like to dump it off. But yeah, Bruce, the only knock against him is he's a little stiff. That's pretty much it. I have full confidence that he's going to have a really, really nice preseason and definitely going to earn a role this season.
Easily the best part of Wall Street. That right.
Absolutely. And much like your guy, Sal, Bruce Anderson did not get drafted. He was picked up. He was signed, though. This is the best part, by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we all know have Ronald Jones, and maybe you're a Peyton Barber fan, but there's not a lot there. That's
nobody loves Jaquaz Bridges like Jaquaz Rogers. I can't even say his name right.
Jaquaz Bridges, is that what you said?
Yeah. Here's the thing: it's a new coaching system. They don't have anything. Ronald Jones, who I do like, and I am buying for cheap. Not sold on him. Pick up Bruce Anderson late.
Solid. Steve, I know Steve has been very busy with the wife and the children, so we're going to let him go on this one. He does not have a deep flyer guy because he's got so much money in most of his leagues because he sucked in the past that he's buying up all the big name guys.
That's right. I tanked last year. Scott said, "You coming back for next year?" And I said, "I didn't suck ass all this last 2 years for nothing. I'm spending all my money and I'm buying all the big names."
That's why we're going to let you close out the show.
Well, I appreciate you guys letting me back on this episode of the Fantasy Football Funhouse. Thank you to everybody who's continued to listen and not deleted this out of their subscription log for their podcast. You can find us on Twitter at FF Funhouse. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also go to fantasyfootballfunhouse.com, which I think is still a website. I'm not entirely sure, but you can go there and find out. It exists. All right, there we go. Confirmation. You can go give us a hit there. And yeah, that's it. Good to be back. Happy to see you, fellas. I missed you.
All right. Well, we were joking before we came on the show about the SFB Podathon that we're going to be doing again this year. It is July 7th. That is the Sunday leading into Monday this year. That way we can get as many people as possible watching with us all day. Steve might have just realized he can't make it that day based on his face.
No, I just didn't know exactly what day it is. It's a Sunday. We're doing it on Sunday.
Yeah. So Sal changed the thing without telling us, Steve. It's okay.
I don't need to tell you guys. It's my bad.
Cool.
We're going to lead into the SFB draft this year. That way we can have as many people as possible watching all day Sunday and overnight until Monday. Take the day off of work Monday anyway. We're going to do it. I'm going to take Tuesday because you got to recover after something like that. And we were joking because I have started to put some names together, but like we have friends who do other podcasts who are listening. Guys, don't forget to reach out to me. Sal Lito FF is my new Twitter handle. Steve doesn't know that.
Oh, I do. I noticed.
You can find me there and DM me, and we're going to have another fun-filled show this year. Maybe we'll even go 26 hours. Get crazy.
Whoa. We talk about charity a lot on this program because I always think that it enhances your fantasy football playing experience, and this is a great way to get involved. I'm not going to say anything else, but we're going to keep going with this Podathon plug because it really is a big thing that we do. We had a lot of fun last year doing it, and it's so much fun to get involved with the other fantasy industry folks and to raise money for this. Sal, what was our total last year? What we crossed the 5K line?
We were just under 5K, about $4,800.
All right. So this year we're looking to do a lot more than that. So if you want to get involved, whether it's to be on the show or to just to be there to donate, let us know. As you said, you can hit up Sal at Sal Lito FF. He writes for Fanball, so he's kind of a big deal. And get in touch with any one of us on Twitter, and we'll help you out. So,
hey Kevin, you know what we should really say before we go?
Hit the button.
No, something else. Someone who's a big part of the fantasy Twitter community. Someone who's become a friend of ours. She listens to the show. Casey Kasem. Casey Royer. I gave out the last name Casey. Don't be mad. She got married this weekend. She got married on May the 4th, so she'll always have May the 4th be with you.
Just like Kevin.
So
that is my and my wife's anniversary. We share it with millions of nerds unintentionally.
So big shout out to Casey and her beautiful bride who got married this weekend. And then I guess in order is a happy anniversary to Kevin as well and his wife, his beautiful bride.
Thank you.
But really an awesome person, Casey, not Kevin. And I just wanted to make sure we acknowledged her and her big day. So hope it went great. I seen pictures on Twitter. It looks like it did. And now, Kevin, you may ask Steve to do that thing that you asked him to do so many times.
Whoa. Not on the podcast.
Oh, no. Steve, just hit the button.
Not that button.
Oh.